Good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to tonight's edition of Shake It Up, the program where we take a closer look at society's movers and shakers of the past 2,000 years and how they've changed the course of history. I am your host, Roxy Durham, and for the next couple of minutes, I have the pleasure of introducing you to one of the finest men history has to offer. His invention helped bring Europe out of the Dark Ages and is considered by many to be the most important invention of the past millennium. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Johann Gutenberg.
Thank you, Fraulein. It is my pleasure to be here today.
And we are so excited to have you. But since we don't have a lot of time for this interview, let's jump right into it. How about telling us a little bit about yourself?
About myself. Well, I was born in 1398 in Mainz, Germany. My mother and father were well-to-do, so I was exposed to the books of the time, unlike the common people who were typically illiterate, too poor to afford books, even if they could read them. There were two types of books, handwritten manuscripts and block books. The manuscripts were written primarily by monks, and took weeks, months, even years to write, depending on the length. Because of this, books were very rare and expensive. The block books were made by a process called block printing, which was developed when I was growing up. Block printing was quicker than copying by hand, but that method still left much to be desired. If you wanted to print a block book, you would first have to cut out a piece of carved wood the size of the page you wanted to print. Then you would carve out every letter from the page that you wanted to print onto the wooden block. You would then ink the letters, put paper on them, and finally press down. The problem with this method was not only did each block take a considerable amount of time to carve, but also each block could only be used to print that one specific page.
And how did you address these problems in your printing press?
I always thought it was a shame that only the wealthy were able to enjoy the knowledge that can be found in books. However, in order for people to read books, they must first become available. This is what I desired for my printing press to do.
That is incredible, Mr. Gutenberg. You had a great desire to help humankind by spreading knowledge and literacy through the printed word, but how did you go about making that dream a reality?
I began with the idea of a movable type, where the letters could be used over and over again in different combinations. I tried doing this with hardwood, carving out the individual letters instead of the whole page, but the wood just didn't give me the crisp and clear letters that I was looking for. Another problem with the wood was that each letter still had to be hand-carved, which was a time-consuming task. So, since I was a metal worker, I worked on creating metal type. I made 2 molds for each letter out of small steel rods, one to be used when the letter stood by itself, and the other to be used when it was connected to other letters. I created molds for each letter and then cast the letters using metal. Now I had movable metal type. I just needed a machine to put that type to work. Printing presses did not exist, but wine presses did. So I modeled my new wooden press after those wine presses. It worked like this. First, a typesetter would arrange all the letters for the page perfectly on the wooden block part of the press. Then, someone would evenly spread the ink onto each letter using what we call ink balls, which were balls of leather attached to the end of a short handle. Next, the paper to be printed would be put into a wooden holder that would then be situated on top of the type. We would slide the wooden box with the type and the paper on top underneath the actual press. This press was a flat piece of wood capable of applying 2,000 pounds of pressure to the paper. We would apply this pressure by pushing a level horizontally across the press and then back again to release the pressure. We would slide the box out from underneath the press, lift the holder off the wooden block, and examine the newly printed page.
That is remarkable. It's just amazing how one man and one invention can alter the course of history. Wow. Oh, it looks like we have a few more minutes left in this section. So would you mind answering a few questions from our listeners, Mr. Gutenberg?
I would love to do that.
All right, then. We have Herman on the line from West Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Welcome to Shake It Up, Herman. What is your question for Mr. Gutenberg?
Thank you, Roxy. Mr. Gutenberg, I would love to hear your thoughts on how far printing technology has come in the centuries since your press. Take laser printing, for example. Who would have thought that it would have been possible to harness static electricity and use a photoconductive drum to put tone around the paper, only to have laser beams through spinning mirrors move across the drum, rapidly turning on and off as they go based on what is being printed, and to think that the negative charges tell the printer to print black toner and the positive charges to leave a white background. The toner is now on the paper, and it is passed through the heated rollers to adhere the toner to the paper to make it smudge-free. Then a discharged lamp erases the electrical images, and the process begins all over again. Now, did you ever dream of anything this fantastic?
What is this laser?
Oh dear, it looks like we're out of time for today, but be sure to tune in tomorrow when we'll unveil the father of yet another radical invention, the Snuggie.